Hi, everyone. My name's PK, and here I have Andrew Shehata with me today, who's a fantastic case study, fantastic client, and I guess fantastic example of someone who was going to use a buyer's agent. I just found out when I was chatting to him before, and who ended up not needing one as has built a property portfolio across multiple states. Actually, today, just signed a contract on behalf of his sister as well. So in this interview, hang around for the next 10, 20 minutes. We'll go through why I didn't use a buyer's agent. We'll go through, topics like fear of getting started, overcoming skepticism of both property investing and of course the course. And we'll take you through some of the numbers on his properties. And Andrew's like super experienced at this now. So he'll share with you a whole bunch of value so that you can get the same results or maybe better, I don't know, as what he's done. So stick around, hit the subscribe button, turn notification bell on, hit the like button, all that kind of stuff. You're going to get a whole bunch of value. Pressure is on you now, Andrew. Congratulations. Thanks for, like I was saying before, thanks for making time.
No worries. Pleasure to be here. Thanks, PK.
Andrew, just tell me, maybe you start from the start. Like you literally just told me before we started hitting record that you were going to use a buyer's agent. Like what was your property journey before you did the course, and why didn't you use a buyer's agent? Why did you choose to invest in your own education instead?
Yeah. So my property journey before I started the course was non-existent. So I hadn't purchased any properties yet. I had family that has purchased properties, and I've kind of helped them in negotiating and things like that before, but nothing for myself to the extent that I wanted to get into and build a portfolio. So yeah, like before I joined the course, or before I even knew that, I guess you even did a course, or before I even knew who you were, I was looking around, trying to start my property investment journey, and I was like, oh, there's this thing called a buyer's agent. So I did a bit of research, found a pretty good one, and that was going to send me back 13K for a property somewhere in Queensland. And I think it was a good property, but then I think I just stumbled upon, I guess, the group, and instead of signing up for the buyer's agent, I signed up for the course instead. um, but like, yeah, I mean, like, I'm kind of glad that I got to experience that side of things before I jumped into the course, just to see what was out there. But like, I kind of just took a leap of faith and did the course, I guess.
Well, thank you for doing that. Like I just got a phone call this morning actually from someone who I suppose was in a similar situation. They just kind of called me out of the blue and said, look, my wife and I were in our 40s, so maybe different situation to you somewhat. And he was like, I just want to plan for my retirement. We just started looking into property investing 2 weeks ago, is what they said. And all of a sudden, they're getting like bombarded with like all of these companies, property investing companies trying to sell them stuff on Facebook ads, YouTube ads. And it's like, I was just telling them, like, you kind of have three options. You can either do it yourself for free, and that's the free option. Try that. Or you can use a buyer's agent, a paid buyer's agent, which charges something like $13,000, $15,000, good ones, bad ones out there. You can also use kind of not so ethical buyer's agents who get paid by the developers, sell you off the plan apartments or house and land packages. They might be free. They might charge only 3,000, but you have to be wary of the conflict of interest. Or the other option is you can invest in your own education, like the course, for example, and kind of be the master of your own destiny, learn how to fish. So that was what I said to them. And I said, look, don't sign up to the course just yet. Like you've literally just started thinking about property investing, get free education first. You can make your decision of these three options. Like, were you aware, Andrew? Sounds like you were, of these three options. And how did you kind of think about this? And why did you land on doing the course as opposed to going for the buyer's agent or going for like these free, buyer's agents who sell you off the plan apartments, house and land packages? Or why don't you just do it yourself?
Um, so yeah, I was aware of those three different options, but I think for me personally, I wasn't confident in spending that much money every single time to a buyer's agent. And like I think they do a great job, but like I just don't want to spend that much money each time because that's obviously like a deposit when it comes to like two or three properties. So that's the first thing for me. And the second thing is that I don't think I was confident enough in kind of taking action and doing it on my own. I didn't really understand how to do it. I didn't know how to buy Interstate confidently. And it just didn't even like really cross my mind. Like, for me, it's like, looking in Sydney or around Sydney because like I'm here, as opposed to kind of looking in Queensland or South Australia or even like WA or something like that. It never really crossed my mind because I'm not in those states or territories. I have no idea. I'm not on the ground. So like, I guess the reason why I kind of like maybe chose the course or did the course is like I kind of, I guess had a chat with a couple of clients before I jumped on, and I think what stood out to me was that it's evidence based. It's obviously data driven, like most people know, and for me that was something that kind of stuck out for me. Um, and that's the reason why I said, okay, like, if I'm going to do it, just let me, I'll do it right the first time, as opposed to kind of like just doing it on my own, not really knowing what I'm doing. So yeah, that's pretty much how I stumbled upon it.
Yeah. No, no, fair enough. And like this fear, it's like this fear of getting started is almost like a blockage for a lot of people. Like you said yourself, you weren't confident doing it yourself. And then to kind of cap that or couple it with this fear of investing into states here in Sydney, you now have property in Queensland, you now have property in South Australia. And you've bought properties under $300,000, under $350,000, yielding, I think, 7%. And we can go into it in a second, but they've grown so much already. Like, how was it? Of course, everyone knows you can use property managers to inspect properties interstate, but kind of just from your experience, how did you gain the confidence being a first-time buyer to buy in these places that you hadn't, I don't know, you probably never had been there before. You certainly didn't catch any flights. You didn't use a buyer's agent. So like, how did you buy interstate with complete confidence, putting down, deposits of somewhere like, I don't know what you put down, but maybe $50,000 each time, or $30,000, $70,000 each time. How did you get over that hump?
Yeah. So that was for me. I remember the first property I bought. It was literally in lockdowns. We were in Sydney. So I was buying a property in South Australia, literally out of my room, and it was just the weirdest experience, just doing that for the first time and doing it in a lockdown. But like, I think, I guess from what I was, from what I went through, I guess through the course and like, networking with some of the other clients and stuff like that, it kind of gave me more confidence, to know what to look out for, know how to do my due diligence, effectively, know what questions to ask, the watch outs, all that kind of stuff as well. I think for me, like that kind of gave me like a more holistic understanding of how to like appropriately choose and select the right property. And I think at the end of the day, for me, it was like about asking them what the right questions, and getting them to kind of like tell me what I need to know so I can make that decision. Whereas before, I guess I didn't really know what to ask. I mean, you can ask like, general questions about like the state or the condition of the place, but like I think having a more kind of like higher level understanding is important. I think that's kind of what the course kind of went through, and that's how it helped me out, or maybe like feel a bit more confident in doing that.
Yeah. Um, yeah, I think that makes sense. Like, I think a lot of times people have this hurdle of thinking that anyone in the real estate industry is out to get me. And if I rely on a property manager's inspection report, that they might just fake it, or they may cover things up, um, to just sell, you just have me buy the property anyway, so they can get it under management. But I mean, I think you're saying the same thing. My experience and all of our clients' experiences are that there are good property managers, not so good ones as well. You need to find good ones, and they're good people, and they do a thorough job, and it's basically almost free. In most instances, it's free. And that way you can buy anywhere you want, without going there from your room. And yeah, it's pretty straightforward. Like, it's not rocket science. I don't know if that was your takeaway, but
Yeah, exactly. Well, I didn't realize it was this easy until I started doing it. I was like, okay, this kind of makes sense. It's more intuitive now. I kind of get the process now, and I became just a bit more confident in doing that. for other properties. So yeah, like it's worked out pretty well.
And talk to me about, so you were saying before that you have just gone conditional on a property for your sister. So, you know, I'm putting words in your mouth here, but you've got enough experience or confidence now that you're buying for other people. Just tell me about, or tell us about that deal.
Yeah. So that deal was in Queensland. I literally we just went conditional on that for my sister. That was a couple of hours ago. Pretty good deal, for better, decent land size as well. Really good part of that area, of that suburb as well, like the right kind of pocket. Close to good schools and parks and the right shopping centers and all that kind of stuff. And um, yeah, so for me, like when I do my deals, I kind of like I'm really quick and snappy with it. So like I get on the phone, have a chat with the with the agents I'm dealing with, and kind of just get the deal over the line in like a day or two, because like these markets are pretty hot.
Mm.
So yeah, I was able to kind of negotiate it as well. And I think there were a few other people that were interested as well in the property, but because I had, I guess, the ability to kind of execute it a bit faster than some of the others, we managed to get that deal. So really happy about that. And that one's looking pretty good. It's under market value. It's going to be sitting at around 8% rental yield as well. So like a really strong rental yield, which helps cash flow and stuff like that. So
Yeah.
my sister will be happy with that, I think.
Well, hopefully it all goes well through the conditional period all the way to unconditional. And yeah, I prefer if she did my course, but I'm glad she got a property anyway. I just want to pick on one other thing as well. Like
Yeah.
your Queensland property was bought under 350,000. The rent was about 445. But I just want to go back to the one property that you had in South Australia, and just to kind of make a point. So the purchase price was in the mid 200s. What's it worth now?
I think about 320, 330.
320. So let's say it's gone up 70 or 80,000 to buy. It's for everyone who's watching it, to buy this property. Let's say at 88% LVR. I don't know what LVR exactly you went with, but you would have needed maybe $40,000-$50,000 or something like that. Is that about right?
Yeah, it was 88%.
88%, great. So including all transaction costs, let's just say, even 45,000 or $50,000 to go on the high side. So worth, mid 200s, let's say 250, the deposit plus stamp duty or transaction cost, $50,000. It's gone up by about $70,000 or $80,000. So it's not been a year. All right. And I'm not just kind of, bigging this up, but this is the truth. You put in $50,000 of your own money. You've already made more than that, more than 100% return on investment. It wasn't that much money. It's not like to invest in property, you need to start off with $100,000. That's not true. And for everyone who's, I'm not against cryptocurrency or stock trading or anything like that, but ask yourselves, everyone who's watching, ask yourselves, are you comfortable putting in $50,000 into cryptocurrency, whether it's today, tomorrow, next month, next year? And can you reliably more than double your money, not to speak or notwithstanding the positive cash flow? Because that one was about a 7% yield as well, I think. So that was spitting out positive cash flow. So like the total cash on cash returns, like, 150% maybe. Can't do the math in my head. 150%, let's say, cash on cash in less than a year. And because it's a property, because it's an asset, it continues going up because we're buying it in the right place. So like that's the economics of property investing. Two inferences, compare that to other asset classes. Just, I'm not here to spruik property, or maybe I am, but everyone do your own due diligence. Compare that to other asset classes. And number two, the second inference is you don't need much money. Like you don't need actually that much money. All you need is thereabouts $50,000 of either equity or savings to get started. Andrew, like you're in your 20s, right? Like, tell me, like, did you used to think that property investing was for people who had tons of money, or did you always know that you only needed a little bit and therefore you could catapult from 1 to 2 to 3? Like, just tell me about your prior knowledge.
Yeah, like I mean, I've always heard of investors that, that went from zero to hero and they end up getting, 10, 15, 20 properties. I'm just like, how do they do that? How do they have the borrowing capacity? How do they have the leverage and the equity that they can use to extract to get to that level? But I had no idea how they did that. And I was probably a bit naive, but like I was just like, how do I get started? Or how do I get to that kind of level? Um, so I feel like, you kind of like need to walk before you run, obviously. So for me, buying that first one and buying that second one and being more confident, knowing that I can extract that equity and use that for the third one, having, I guess, the right, loan structures or the right borrowing vehicles in place to be able to, help me to borrow more and then to get to that level kind of all makes a bit more sense to me now. But before I actually got into it, I was like, I'm really not too sure how these guys actually are able to do that. But like I kind of see the light, so to speak. That like yeah, it's interesting just to be in that kind of space now, and just to kind of see it all happening right now for me. So I'm pretty grateful for it. Grateful for the course, of course, but like it's definitely something that I initially thought, oh, like, can I do this? Versus now I'm like, okay, like I can see that there is a way to kind of accumulate a decent property portfolio.
Yeah. I really like hearing that because, like, if you're a young person in Sydney, like you are, uh, to invest in Sydney is like you're going to wait till you're 35 or 40 years old, to be able to afford something half decent in Sydney. But in that meantime, like you've done, you can buy elsewhere in Australia. And still, even though we've gone through a huge boom, there are still good areas under 300, under 350. I mean, just like you did a transaction today for your sister, that is still affordable and that you don't need $50,000 for. So it's kind of like, I feel it's like a shame when young people in Sydney, they kind of put off their hopes for property ownership because they don't realize that there's more places in Australia than just Sydney or Melbourne for that matter. So yeah, it's good that you're seeing the light, but it's also good that you had the foresight to see the light, even before and actually get into property investing.
Yeah, that I think that's a big one as well, is that most people kind of stick to what they know. So if you're living in Sydney, like most of my friends are only looking in Sydney because it's what they know. Same as with some of the friends I have in Melbourne, same kind of situation. So like being able to kind of look beyond that and kind of like looking at the numbers, because property is a numbers game, I think is important to kind of like give you more options to make better investment decisions.
Yeah. Yeah. And I think I just want to ask you one last question. We've talked about a whole bunch of good stuff. Let's like balance it out with a bit of reality as well. You're a property investor. Of course, you've got properties that are very high yielding. So to some extent, they're, future proofed against interest rate rises. But how do you personally observe the likelihood and not just likelihood, the reality of interest rate rises in the next 1 or 2 years? Does that make you a little bit fearful, or like how do you think about that?
Yeah, I think there is that sentiment at the moment, and like my friends and family are fearful as well. Interest rates are rising, inflation is happening, property prices are going to go down, all that kind of stuff. But for me, I feel like, like personally, I guess being in the weeds, knowing the types of yields that I can achieve, seeing the growth that I have experienced so far, and knowing that the data points to that growing at the same time in the short term or even the long term as well. I feel like for me, I'm not too worried because I know that I can absorb those costs and then still have some at the end, right? For that passive income. Like I'm not looking at 4, 5%, 6%. I'm looking at a bit higher than that. So I feel like for me, that's part of my strategy. Those higher yielding properties. So yeah, I would say it doesn't affect me that much. I'm not too worried about it at the moment, because I think I can kind of absorb that. I think I think interest rates is like a huge thing at the moment. Like interest rates rising is a huge thing for most people, not wanting to jump into it, or kind of take the plunge into property. But like I think if you have the right property, the vacancy rates are low, it's in a good pocket of the suburb, the data kind of points to it, growing or bottom of cycle or whatever, then I feel like you're well placed or you're in a good position to kind of be able to not let interest rates rising affect you too much, and you can still kind of have a portfolio that grows, where you're not out of pocket. So I think that's probably my situation at the moment. I think it's a good spot to be in, I'd say.
Yeah, no, that's a good perspective because it's a property investor, like you said, in the weeds always has a little bit more of a nuanced perspective as opposed to a media commentator or someone who absorbs media commentary and the clickbait. So it's good to kind of see and hear from someone in the trenches, so to speak. And I know I said last one, but last one now. Maybe like, what's your biggest advice, whether it's a mindset thing or a data thing or practical relationship thing? What's your biggest advice for property investors, perhaps like you used to be before you owned property, or maybe who are in a similar position to you now, already have some properties under their belt, but not sure how to go next? What words of wisdom can you impart to them?
Yeah, well, I think first and foremost, like looking at the key data factors and where that's pointing towards is probably the most important thing. So like, state, breaking that down to suburb, breaking that down into pockets of that suburb. So that's the most important thing. And then for me, the second most important thing um, is having that relationship or building that relationship with agents and other stakeholders. Because like having the right team, like for me, has just made things so much easier. Like I feel more confident in buying anywhere, knowing that I have the right team of people, the right agents, conveyancer, surveyor, all that type of stuff. It's like having the right people around you just makes life a lot easier. So yeah, that's what I would put. Yeah, I'd put it down to having like a more data driven kind of research methodology and having the right team around you. Those are my two takeaways, I guess.
Yeah, no, well said, well said. So yeah, thank you for sharing that. Oftentimes it's like very similar insights that I hear from a lot of clients, a lot of successful members, but that doesn't make them any less meaningful. It's sometimes you just need to hear the same thing again and again for it to penetrate my thick skull and actually leave an impression, and for me to actually do something about it. So yeah, thank you for your time, Andrew, and obviously huge congrats.
Thanks so much. Thanks, PK. Cheers.
And for everyone who's watching, thank you for being with me. I think there's like more than 65 of these client interviews now. There's a whole dedicated YouTube playlist. I think they're all about half an hour long. Now, I don't really care if you do my course or not, but do yourself a favor and go watch them, because they're real people just like you, just like Andrew. Some of them are young, like Andrew. Some of them are not so young. Some of them are really well off. Some of them are not so well off. Some of them have been in Australia since they were born because they're born and brought up here. Many of them are migrants. Go and absorb their stories, their education, their real life case studies to, I guess, inspire you, educate you, and I suppose most importantly, just get you to the next step. There's more than 65 of these client stories in the YouTube playlist. Go check them out. I'll leave links below to free resources, my podcast, Facebook group with more than 15,000 people. As you can kind of figure out by now, I'm big on education. So get educated. That's the most important thing. That's what Andrew did, and achieved some great results as well. Once again, thank you so much, Andrew, and we'll talk again soon.
Cheers. Bye.
Catch ya.